The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
I don't like Utah. In fact, I hate them. I hate everything about them. I hate their program. I hate their fans. I hate everything. So it felt really good to send those guys home. They didn't deserve it. It was our time, and it was our time to win. We deserved it. We played as hard as we could tonight, and it felt really good, again, to send them home, to get them out of here. So, game will always remember. I mean, I think the whole university and their fans and the organization is classless. I think, they threw beer on my family and stuff last year and did a whole bunch of nasty things, and I don't respect them, and they deserve it. They deserve it.
Oh, Mitch. Remember there was a time where I don't know, maybe we're going to get in trouble for playing that clip. There was a time where the terms holy war were unwelcome in this building. There were times when that clip right there was nowhere to be found in our archives because it was like, hey, we do not want to build this incivility up. I'm not for building the incivility, but I am a lover of history, all right, Mitch, and I know you are too.
Yeah.
And so that was, of course, a moment. That was, of course, a big one in that one. We're talking all rivalry stuff. Next hour, we're going to kind of just go through some of the memories we've had inside this rivalry now that it's officially back as a conference matchup. It is First and 12. Alex Kirry, Mitch Harper. Mitch, let's talk a little bit about what the state of the Big 12 is. You've covered this conference, and we both have done this show now since BYU's been in the conference. This is our second year doing this program, so we dive deep into kind of everything going on behind the scenes as well as everything that's going on the field. And, of course, you do everything top to bottom when it comes to football and basketball. But second year for BYU in the Big 12 could not go any better. Obviously, they're undefeated. But why has the transition been so hard for Utah into the Big 12? And really, what's the state of this conference compared to the other Power 4 leagues that are out there?
I feel like this is the third best league in college football right now. I think it's better than the ACC. The SEC is still number one. I pause on that because the Big Ten's pretty dang good too. The Big Ten doesn't have the depth, I think, of the Big 12. I really don't believe that. I mean, the Big 12, what's interesting about this conference, and you saw it last week when Utah lost to Houston, is just that everyone's got this ability for one day to really look like a really good football team. Whereas, and maybe the bottoms are getting better in all the leagues across the board. We're kind of seeing that more and more as transfer portal and NIL. But I think one thing, too, is that these are heavily resourced programs, and then they play a style of football where you get a lot of different variety. And it's a lot of defense, too, in this conference. And, it's still – I don't think there's an elite team that you say, man, that is a national championship good team in this league. It's just not. And look, BYU, I've been seeing them every step of the way. I don't look at them and say they're ready to win the title. I know the players have said they're shooting for that, and as they should, but I don't see that yet. But at the same time, in college football, no one's looked incredibly dominant so far this season, so why not this year? The Big 12 has got great coaches, and I think that for Kyle Whittingham, the transition of this league, it's hard to figure out, honestly, as far as what the struggles were. I mean, because it seems like on paper Utah had the talent to be right there in the upper tier from the get-go. I mean, I honestly thought the floor for Utah was 8-4, and they're already at 4 losses through 8 games. And so it's really shocking because I still feel like, because even Baylor AD Mac Rhodes, he said in the offseason that the football product's got to get better. Brett Yormark has said that. The football product has got to get better in the Big 12.
Well, like in what way? What's the thing that makes them different, I guess? Is it like, I mean, there used to be like a moment where they were like, hey, that's the 3 yards in a cloud of dust, kind of boring. And then it turned into like a lot of spread offenses. And then it turned into like, hey, the Big 12 doesn't play defense. Where's the league at right now when you say they're the third best? What's the thing that has to get them to that next level to be competing with a Big Ten and an SEC, or is that not really a possibility because the brands are just too big in those conferences?
Honestly, I believe it's recruiting. And, I feel like that's one of the big detriments I think a lot of the AP pollsters turn to when it comes to ranking these teams is that they just kind of like in their head, would that team or would that logo fare well against that one? And I think a lot of people just default to the recruiting rankings. And look, as someone who subscribes immensely to recruiting rankings and is a big believer in those, I agree. Like those are going to more times than not win out when it comes to national titles. But the thing is that the Big 12's got this amazing ability to where they have this. They get these, mid 3-star prospects or high-end 3-stars, and they turn them into 5-star players. You look across the board in this league where I point to someone like an Isaiah Glasker at BYU, where he was a low-end 3-star prospect out of Bingham High School, wide receiver, safety, and you mean to tell me if that guy didn't go to the portal after this year, he wouldn't have dozens of Power 4 opportunities because he's 6'5", an incredible athlete. He's just got the build where that's what makes this league good. And I don't think enough media, when they put together their rankings, understand that. And that's a testament to the coaching that's in this league, that they've got this ability to take on, the 45th ranked recruiting class, and by the end of its cycle, 3 or 4 years in, that becomes a group where, man, there was about 5 or 7 NFL guys in that class. And that just doesn't get credited enough, I think, in the Big 12, because the starting point for them is always behind the 8 ball. The starting point in the AP preseason polls, the recruiting rankings, it's always far behind the SEC Big 10. So weeks upon weeks and months of narrative building, and then it's like you're fighting that battle. And that's where you hope the playoff rankings. I'm very fascinated to see what this tone-setting playoff rankings this week is going to be on Tuesday, because, man, if they rank BYU higher than expected, that could be a real image boost, I think, for the Big 12, because we just really don't know how they're going to view a 12-team playoff rankings. But if they got BYU at, say, 13, man, that's just going to be an ultimate image killer for the Big 12. It's unfortunate because it's not fair. It's just there's good football in this.
Yeah, and I think you're going to get BYU and Iowa State. There's going to be some version of those, those guys in those first rankings where they're going to shake out. It's going to be interesting to see how they do it. But at the same time, okay, so are the college football? It's going to be interesting on this first one. At the College Football Playoff Committee, we'll have the guts to put 2 Big 12 teams up there in that first set of rankings. And it's early, so maybe they'll just be like, hey, look, we'll throw them a bone early. We'll see what the Big 12 can do, and until proven otherwise, because as it stands, like you can't say that an undefeated BYU team is the same as an undefeated, even Pitt. You know what I mean? There's no way that they should be compared in those same in those same conversations. They shouldn't be. BYU should get more respect. Iowa State should get more respect. And, it's interesting to see the projections. I'm interested to see how – my gut tells me that they're going to be – because they don't – well, you tell me. How do they rank them? Do they guess on who the conference champion is going to be, or do they just do a numeric rank, and then by the end of the season they have to put in a 1, 2, 3, 4 seed with the conference champions? How do they do it in this first rollout?
So it will just be a top 25 ranking. And there was actually a webinar this past week with the playoff committee.
How to interpret their findings? It's like how to translate the College Football Playoff Committee.
So this week will just be the rankings, and then it'll just be a top 25 poll. They tear it down, and every week. So what it is this week after the games are played, after this week, and then BYU, Utah, and all the games will be played. They'll just tear it down and rebuild it again. Probably in their Irving, Texas headquarters, and build it up in some hotel suite.
The Gaylord Hotel in Grapevine, Texas.
They'll build it up again, and then it'll just be a top 25. And then you can through the top 25 rankings. So if you've got BYU at number 8, but they're the third highest ranked conference champion, they would be the 3 seed. And if Miami's number 9 behind BYU, they would be the 4 seed if they're the 4th highest ranked champion. So that's how it'll be as far as rankings go on that front. And it'll be interesting to see because, if there was the computer metrics, there's a lot of old BCS models that would say BYU's the 7th or 8th best team in college football right now, yet the AP top 25 last week had them at 9. Then this bye week, we'll see where they're at coming up here.
Yeah, what's funny is that's what's really funny about the AP poll is like, hey, if you don't play that week, you actually might get dinged, which is weird because they're already 8-0, and that's what's fascinating to me. See how this thing's going to shake out and what the first rankings are going to be. The good news for BYU is that it's early enough in the process that as long as they win, if they beat Utah and then if they come back home and beat Kansas and they're 10-0, let's say, which is a wild thing to consider.
Yeah.
10-0 BYU, at that point you're going to have more SEC teams kind of eating their own. Same thing with the Big Ten. And I think you're going to see BYU move up the same way that Utah has done, right, in the past, which is just like, hey, they're winning. We can't do anything else except for just keep putting them higher than the teams that are losing in front of them. And so that's it.
BYU's got to get, if they want to be in a position where, they could, get in as an at-large, they got to get to the Big 12 title game as an undefeated, because I think that's the key. If you lose a game in regular season, I think sadly they will get dinged. Because,
if they lose again in the Big 12 championship game, they'll be like, well, it's a 2-loss Big 12 team versus a 2-loss SEC team. You're not going to let them in, are you? And it's like, geez.
Yeah, they won't let them in, I would assume. So I think that's going to be critical when it comes to maybe having an at-large potential for BYU. But it's going to be interesting. But I do love what this playoff has created because it's just the storylines, the drama. I mean, it's huge. It's immense stuff, and it's great for college football. And to think that college football wants to maybe change it again before this thing even starts is just crazy to me.
Right.
Brett Yormark said a couple weeks ago that the playoffs should not be changed. That was his stance. But it's like, does he have the power? Does he have the voice to actually make that happen? Because it just feels like the SEC and Big Ten are just continuing to consume the narrative more and more. These TV networks are leaning into them more than ever before. I mean, BYU-Utah gets an 8-15 spot with BYU as an undefeated team and in the top 10 of the rankings. Like,
right.
how does that
And
that
the best
work?
rivalry game in the conference currently, as a brand. You know what I mean? So it is wild that they that's the kind of treatment they get. Let's take another break. We'll come back. When we do, let's roll out a little bit of our conversation we had with Utah running back Mekhi Bernard this week on JJ and Alex and how they're prepping. I mean, they're just as much reeling about that Houston loss and trying to figure out and get their footing with that, and then trying to turn that corner and prepare for BYU. It's a lot to ask, but we'll talk to Utah's offensive captain, Mekhi Bernard, right around the corner. Stay with us. It's 1st and 12. It's all brought to you by Macy's, the freshest fruits and vegetables and all of your favorite local brands as well. Everything you expect from Macy's. They bring you 1st and 12. Happy shopping. We'll take the break here. We'll come back. We got more to go. Stay with us on KSL News Radio and on the KSL Sports Zone.